It's time for The Drive with Q on Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game. Now, here's Q.
Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a football Friday, a What the Frig Friday edition of The Drive with Q, coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game studios. Southwest Florida's newest game in town, powered by the Coastal Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones, mi hermano. Angel Martinez behind the glass producing show, keeping us on the air. 2 hours to play with on this 17th of January 2025. As always, don't forget, 727-858-6650. That'll get you involved in two-way sports talk. Bring something to the table. We are also brought to you by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase. Use the promo code BYP20. Our picks in the 5 o'clock hour. Busy Friday. A lot to get into NFL-wise. NFL divisional matchups are among us. Jovan Alford will join us in about 15 or so moments. We'll get an Eagles perspective from him. Lake Lewis, who covers the Washington Commanders, they have a huge test on the road against a top seed in the NFC. Detroit Lions, we will get his take on Jaden Daniels-Quinn and really just a turning point of Washington's season. But I think they're a great story. I think it's an upstart story for the Washington Commanders. I believe, as I keep going back and forth, and I keep not really racking my brain when it comes to these games, and we'll have the picks in the 5 o'clock hour. I'll probably apologize right now for the 0 for 3 in the NBA plays, but be that as it may, I will say this. With the way everyone's trying to break down these games, right? Everyone's giving your opinion, their opinion. You guys are giving us your opinion, the breakdown, the X's and O's, the all 22, the watching the film, the different views, the Baldy's view, the Baldy's angles, 22 breakdown, PFF, whatever. It comes down to really a simple formula. It really is very simple at this time of year in the NFL, especially in these divisional rounds, divisional matchups. It doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to have any sizzle or sauce. Just go out there and get the friggin' job done. Do what you need to do. Do whatever it takes to get past this round and have an opportunity for an NFC and AFC championship. Because if you look at the way these games are going to unfold Saturday and Sunday, look, the Texans are going to be in, I believe, a spot where they're going to have to weather the early storm of Kansas City. They're going to have to take Kansas City's, best punch early on. They can ill afford to fall behind 17-0, 17-3. They can't. If they do, they're going to get their doors blown off. Washington's going to be able to move the football against Detroit. It's just a question of, will Detroit have that stop when they need it? And are we going to see Jaden Daniels rise to the occasion, do what needs to be done? On Sunday, the Rams and the Eagles, and the line has just sat. It's marinating at 6.5. We know the Rams' run defense, it's gotten better, but throughout the season, it hasn't been a juggernaut. I mean, you've only had a couple times this season, if you're a Rams fan, where you actually held the opposition under 100. So what are the Eagles going to do? Recipe for success. Number 26. It doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be sexy. Run off tackle, run up the gut. Here we go. $125. Hurts can do what he needs to do. And then you have, I believe it could be the game of the season. This might go down as an all-time classic. The Ravens and the Bills lock in at 6:30. Don't go anywhere. It's going to be nasty weather. It's going to be cold. Right now, the line is bumped up to Baltimore with a little juice at 1.5 on the road. You want to tackle Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter? Keep it simple. You know Allen's going to make some plays. It's just every man has to step up. Every player needs to do their job. Every play, you have to sell out. This is it. You lose, there's no more weekends of football for you. When you're this close to having an opportunity to get to an NFC, AFC championship game, respectively, all bets are off, man. You have to sell out. You got to wrap up. You got to hit the hole. You got to protect the football. You got to stay on side. You can't have bad PI penalties. You can't have mental lapses. You have to have solid coaching. I mean, it all comes into play. All of it. It all comes into play. This is why head coaching is huge in these spots. And this is why you might not get that if you're Jalen Hurts, 25 of 30 for 288, 3 touchdowns. You might not need that type of effort. You might not have to have that type of game from Jalen Hurts, but you might need 25 of 30 for 288 and 4 touchdowns for Josh Allen. Every game is different, but just do your job. Do your job. You're not asked to do much, man. It's all about assignment football at this point. It's all about assignment football. And I believe, too, the teams that walk away with wins this weekend and all these games, there's, Andy Reid, am I going to be a little aggressive here? Ryans, am I going to be aggressive? McDermott, we know your track record. McVay, we know you're aggressive. Sirianni, a little hot and cold. Be aggressive. Be consistent. Campbell, we know you are going to be very, very aggressive. And come Monday on a Man Up Monday, which teams are manning up? You got to be able to win the battle, win the war in the trenches. And the teams that do that this weekend, Saturday and Sunday respectively, they're going to be okay. Now, again, when you peel back the curtain and you look at these games, X's and O's, which we are going to dissect both sides of the ball, these are good matchups. These are really good matchups. It's just a question of, the quarterbacking play, the coaching, like everything comes in, hand in hand in these games. A missed tackle here, a breakdown on third down, a giving up a bad PI, giving up a bad pass interference call. You don't want that. You can't live with that. You don't have an opportunity to regroup from that. You look at these games, and it's funny because in our backyard, the narrative this week, Jalen Hurts, right? I feel as though he's just the lightning rod to trigger spot when it comes to talking about quarterbacks. Stroud, Mahomes, Daniels, Goff, Stafford, Hurts, Allen, Jackson. We ranked them yesterday. We had good dialogue and debate. We had fun with it. But Jalen Hurts just, even if he goes out there and he has 20 pass attempts and they run the ball 35 times, what the hell difference does it make as long as you get the win? We're so fixated on you have to do X, Y, and Z. No. What you need to do if you're a Rams fan, you can't get beat over the top. High safety, you can't. Brown's going to kill you. You can't give up 165 to Saquon. You're going to lose. If you're an Eagles fan, what can't you do? Turn the friggin' football over. You just can't turn the ball over. You can't have a Hurts or Saquon fumble. You can't. If you're Washington, play within yourself. Use your strengths. If you have confidence in Daniels, let him rip. Let him sling it. Take advantage of that banged-up Lions team, that banged-up secondary, that banged-up pass rush. If you're Detroit and you're going to be aggressive in the first, you better damn well be aggressive in the fourth, Dan Campbell. Every game, every team, the nuances, the plays, everything matters. It's always magnified. But just do your job. That's the message that is being preached to these teams this weekend. Do your job. Don't be foolish. Don't be selfish. Don't be stupid. Just do your job. Because a lot of times when you get to the divisional round, hell, when you get to the NFC and AFC championship games, it's one play. Which snowball, right? San Francisco, Detroit, fourth down conversion doesn't pan out. Kick the field goal. Here come the 49ers. A fumble here, San Francisco against the Giants many moons ago. McNabb having to drop back 36 times. Doesn't pan out. Couple interceptions. Ricky Manning Jr. Like, everyone needs to do their job. You have to simplify it. We know which teams are going to be able to run the football. We know which teams go into this weekend with big-time backs. Nobody wants to tackle Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter. Nobody. Not when they're running downhill like that. We also know which quarterbacks can be friggin' electric. Your gap discipline, understanding your assignment, do your job. That's the theme of this weekend. And I believe we're going to get an upset or two. I really do. I believe we're going to get an upset or two this weekend. 727-858 6650. We will open it up early, see what you guys have to say on this Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here, Miramano. Angel Martinez behind the glass. By the way, in the 5 o'clock hour, we will have to have, I don't want to call it an intervention, but I think we have to, you have to have an honest talk. We're going to have a grown-up talk on the air because there seems to be a little confusion when it comes to the flow of comments, the flow of texters, the flow of listeners. Who do we get to? Are we not giving love? Are we shading? Are we not giving enough flowers to those that are commenting in? And we're going to have to we're going to have a big boy conversation about that sometime in the 5 o'clock hour. But let's hear what you guys have to say. 727-858-6650. That will get you involved on a Football Friday edition. What's the man have to say? Hello. Yes, we are on 4 o'clock. That's typically what happens, right? 4 o'clock. If R-rated jokes are not allowed, let me know. I'll try to get Biden back in office, block free speech. See, this is what I'm saying. It's starting already. Not even football related. Again, the jokes in the 5 o'clock hour. The jokes come in the 5 o'clock hour. You guys know it. I just don't know, Angel. I feel as though there's going to have to be some type of intervention. What the frig? I have to root for Q's Commanders to bring the NFC Championship back to Philadelphia. You don't listen, because if you go to Detroit, you might get your fanny kicked. I mean, Trevor, here's the problem I have with this nonsense. Because all season long, didn't he heckle me about Washington constantly? Get off Washington. They're not going to win 6 games. Daniel stinks. What are you talking about? They're not going to be a playoff team. The Eagles are going to whip them, blah, 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 blah. They're not making the playoffs. And here we are. It would be justice. It would be karma if Washington had to play the Philadelphia Eagles. No, I'm just throwing it out there. That's all. Yes, Joey, it is a Friday. I don't know so much if it's a happy Friday, but yes, we did make it day by day. We did our assignment and we got through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all the way to Friday. You can always count on the man for some sarcastic. Which team will have to man up? Oh, Manolo, Radio, Loco Lunes. Dígame, madman. Come on, dígame. Hablando conmigo ahora. What else does he say? Let's see. As I squint, I'm deciding which team to bet $83 on. I wonder where $83 came on. He probably got stiffed by a friend or something like that, which happens sometimes. Yeah, Angel, we're going to have that talk. Now, Angel, you already said before we came on the air, you already came out that you don't believe the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, which means you see the Eagles either losing this weekend or losing in the NFC Championship. It's pretty much what you told me around 350-ish, because I was asking you about the narrative surrounding the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. So you're saying right now, as it stands, 4:13 Eastern Time on a Friday, January 17th, 2025, your Philadelphia Eagles will lose Sunday or next weekend in the NFC Championship?
I believe it's going to be next weekend. This weekend, they might survive the Rams, depending on how the running game plays out for the Eagles and Saquon stays healthy. But if they're able to pull off the win, which I don't see Detroit losing against the Commanders, Redskins, those who like to say so, but I already see it. But nonetheless, to me, listen, I've said it since the beginning of the season. I don't care what people think or anything else. The Eagles will not make a Super Bowl appearance in 2024, meaning 2025, because it is the 24 Bowl played in February of 25. I don't see it.
All you have to say is you don't see the Eagles winning the Super Bowl this year. I don't need diatribe. I don't need the 2024, 2025. See, this is the problem. This kills the flow of the show. People are already commenting in. Once Angel makes an appearance, it's early right now. The show has officially begun. So listen, let me add this.
Sure.
That Rams team, they're not really good when it comes to the run defense, right? And this is where I think the narrative, all I heard all week with Jalen Hurts is, if the Eagles fall behind 17-3. Can Jalen Hurts throw him back in the game? They're not going to panic down 14 as long as you have that offensive line and Saquon Barkley. But
Correct.
Hurts does not need to go out and sling it 28 times. So it's like, why are we even? I feel as though unless you're looking at these props or you're a gambling man, why are we fixated on the stats? Just do your job and get the W. That's all. Get
That's
the
it.
W.
You know who can answer that even better? Jovan.
Well, see that as we segue into our good friend Jovan Alford, get ready to join us. I love when Angels just decide, you know what, I'm taking it over right now. Our good friend Jovan Alford, and of course, does a great job for Fansided at Total Sports Live. Kind enough to join us on a Friday. What's going on, brother? How are you? I see. Did you get? I thought maybe you got rid of the Sixers nonsense behind you. I was.
Oh no, that's still staying there. That's Iverson, so that can never come down.
That's fine. All right, so let's start with the elephant in the room, right? The Philadelphia Eagles. And first of all, can we do this? Can we put aside this narrative this week of if the Eagles lose, it's because there's distractions, because they have coordinators who are interested in jobs and interviewing. Who came up with that nonsense?
I think there's a part of the fan base that is burnt by that idea because of the whole Jonathan Gannon situation that played out a couple years ago in the Super Bowl with him, and it was a little murky with what happened with the Cardinals, and I think then the Cardinals lose a draft pick. But at the same time, Shane Steichen eventually got the job with the Colts after it was over. So I think it's a bunch of nonsense. Like, if you're still game planning on Friday and Saturday with a game on Sunday, you have a much bigger problem on your hands.
I was talking a little bit about this week. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. The Rams run defense. The Rams defense got better over the last month or so this season, but you can run on the Rams. To me, it's just a recipe of number 26 behind that line. Let them go out and have 25 to 30 touches, $165, and away you go in the NFC Championship game. Like, don't overthink it is my point.
Yeah, no, I think that's the simple recipe, for success for this team. And it's what's catapulted them this season for them to be on that 10-game winning streak. And that was the recipe, right? Eagles fans were highly upset for Hurts turning over the football. He becomes more taking less risk-averse passes. They lean on Barkley, and you've seen the success. Last week, I think he only had, 9 carries at halftime. They figured it out in the second half. Okay, like, passing game's not working, more so I think because of game planning. They got the ball to Barkley, and that will work out. And they're going to have to do the same thing too, because the best way to slow down a pass rush, especially as how dominant the Rams looked last week, with Kobe Turner, with Byron Young, with Jared Verse, you got to be able to run the football, and then factoring in the potential weather conditions with the snow potentially, it all lines up to just get the ball to Barkley and let him go to work.
Yeah, it really does. And the fact that with the Rams, high safety, the lack of health, so to speak, you can see A.J. Brown, who had a field day in that first game, and Smith going off. And I know Goddard with the practicing, not practicing, but you still got viable options from the tight end spot. I think it's a tough matchup for the Rams. But I also know that Stafford has been really good in the playoffs under McVay. I know Stafford puts up some really big numbers. He might have to have the game where he throws for 30-something odd times. But now they got really good wide receivers. They can run the football. Mm-hmm. How much does the loss of Dean hurt the Eagles in this game?
I definitely it's going to hurt them specifically in run defense, because he was very good in run defense this year. I think his PFF grade was like at 82, which is pretty good for a linebacker. So they're going to miss him in the run defense. We saw last week when Oren Burks came in that the Packers kind of went a little bit more with Josh Jacobs, a little bit more Josh Jacobs out of the backfield, in the passing game. So I think that's where the Eagles are going to miss him the most, especially. With Kyron Williams, who's not only a factor on the ground, but he can be utilized out the backfield in the passing game. But you hope with a full week of reps in practice that Oren Burks, who has starting experience and playoff starting experience, can kind of carry that. You might see Jeremiah Trotter Jr. as well, in this game too, which, Vic Fangio seemed very comfortable and confident that, if it's his time, then, it's his time to, get on the field. So they're definitely going to miss him, but this is where you need your defensive line to step up. And, Zach Bond, if he continues to make plays the way he's been doing, then they should be able to get by without Dean.
Yeah, I also think they catch a break too if Higbee's not 100%, because we've seen tight ends in the past who have actually
Yep.
had some big games against
Yep.
the Philadelphia Eagles. And, they need to get their ground game going. They've got some wide receivers. They've got some weapons. Stafford, is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's been before. The weather, even if it's nasty, you might get that in the trenches type of game, which again, it favors. It just, when you've got that offensive line, and we've talked about this, right? Saquon, 3 yards, 2 yards, 4 yards. Okay. Mentioned it last week. Second half. Now all of a sudden the 3.6 to 4.6 turns into 6.5, 7. Boom, boom, boom. I feel as though this is a Saquon type of game. Like, why not? Let's ride him to the NFC Championship. And I know the line's sitting 6.5. It'll probably close right around there. I don't think it's going to drop anymore. Or what was it? 4.5. Pardon me. You would know right off the top more than I would. I think it's 6.5, right? And the total is 43. Yeah. So, the shade over the total. This has the makings of 24 points in those conditions, I think, win you the game.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I think that total's kind of been bouncing back and forth a little bit because of the weather. I think it opened at 45, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So it's dropped down to 43 because of the weather. But it's the truth, right? You saw what the Rams defensive line was able to do against that Vikings offensive line. I don't think the same thing's going to happen with, the Eagles offensive line, even though Eagles offensive line probably to a man would say that they didn't probably feel like they played their best game, last week, because they were under a little bit of pressure and siege. And you can make the case that the Packers defense might be slightly better than what the Rams offer on defense. So if the Eagles offensive line can hold up, like you said, Barkley, he might not break out that big run, early in the first quarter, but like you said, 3, 4, 5, you saw at the end of the game last week, they wear down that defensive line. He finds the lane, takes off, and slides, for 20, 30-yard run. So there are going to be opportunities there. They just got to be able to run the ball. And it comes down to Kellen Moore as a play caller, being able to stack those plays together to put this offense in a rhythm and to put them in a great spot.
Jovan Alford, kind enough to join us on a Friday, 727-858-6650. Trevor, who is a big-time Eagles fan, queuing the national media comments at Jackson Allen Mahomes can be electric. Hurts is never in the combo. I agree. Hurts is the same as Trent Dilfer. I want to go that far. The national media always comments, Hurts just needs to not turn the ball over. But he just doesn't, because we can say that for every quarterback in the NFL. But obviously in our backyard, the focus is more predominantly on the Ravens, on the Eagles, the Giants and the Jets, DC and whatnot. We know what Allen and Jackson have done, the body of work. We know what Mahomes has done, the body of work. Stroud and Daniels are still relatively young in their career. We know Jalen Hurts can take a team to the Super Bowl, but we also know that Jalen Hurts at times, whether the offense is out of sync, whether he feels compelled to force the ball, he will make that bad Baker Mayfield-like turnover. I mean, that is a fact, especially the red zone at times. If he's scrambling, again, pocket collapses. That's the worst thing, because he takes off. You're not getting him, right? But if you flush him out sometimes, he is prone to make mistakes. And it's not a knock on him, because all I said the other day was, if you look how these quarterbacks, or if you look at the way I ranked them, the quarterbacks that are left, I think people are looking at a couple years ago, the narrative changes on Hurts. You win the Super Bowl, he's MVP.
Yep.
You lose 6 straight to close out the season. You don't show up again last year. And now this year, wait a second. Who didn't you have last year? You didn't have number 26.
Yep.
Who rushes for 2,000 yards, a great offensive line. So to Trevor's point, I understand the criticism, because the question has been asked, what happens now if they are down 17-3, 21-3? Are you confident enough, conditions aside, weather aside, can Hurts throw them back into a game?
I definitely think that he can. And when we talk about, him, having that turnover, or, potentially having those turnover risky plays, something which he's eliminated over the course of the season. Even in that game last week against, the Packers, a lot of people were mad that he didn't make certain throws or stuff like that. He didn't make the throw because it wasn't there. Either the play wasn't there, or he did a great job on the audible to Dallas Goedert on the quick pass. Even though he threw a little bit behind him, it still got a big play. So I think he can throw him back into the game. I mean, he's had games going back even to 2012, where he's had big passing games. I mean, even in the Super Bowl, in a loss, he went toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes in that game and, outplayed him against one of the better defenses in the NFL by Steve Spagnuolo. They put up 30 plus points. Usually that
You
wins
win the game.
in a Super Bowl, but obviously it didn't happen that way. So he's shown that in these moments he can throw him back in there. And again, like you mentioned, it also helps when you do have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith,
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert, and even like you said, Saquon Barkley, because Saquon Barkley isn't DeAndre Swift. Saquon Barkley isn't Miles Sanders. Like
Correct.
he's his own player.
Yeah, fair point. Man chimes in. Hurts doesn't have to do much at the moment, which I agree with. For whatever reason, it's a knock on him, just like it is on other game managers of loaded teams. Yeah, listen, it doesn't have to be gaudy. It doesn't have to be sexy.
You just got to win, like you said earlier. Just got to win.
Line aside, do you like the Eagles in this game?
Yeah, line aside, I do like them. I think they know obviously they know what's at stake here.
Yeah.
I think knowing how they played last week, and even I think how even the defense played. The defense played really good against that Green Bay team, even though Jordan Love wasn't his best and, they just looked out of sync. That defense was looking really good. So I think offense figures it out. They should be able to come away, and win this game, at home and see what happens, in the NFC title game.
All right, let's spend a couple minutes. We'll go around the rest of the games this weekend. Texans and the Chiefs. I mean, I think the Texans can hang in there for about a half, and then you start to see a well-rested Kansas City team at home. Like, to me, this kind of has the makings of a 31-17 Kansas City win. Now, I totally got it wrong. Chargers didn't even show up. Herbert played poorly. I think it was more or less bad game by Herbert, good defensive effort from the Texans, but I don't see Mahomes making the poor decisions that Herbert was making. And again, Kansas City's at home. We know what they're trying to do. They want to get back to the Super Bowl with the opportunity to win it for a third straight year, unprecedented. But I do like Kansas City in this game.
Yeah, me too. I think what also helps Kansas City have the bye and everybody's healthy. Like Chris Jones is healthy.
Yep.
Jalen Watson is going to be back on the field in the secondary, so that's going to help, big time. I think the matchup to watch in this game will be to see how those Texans corners stick with the Hopkins, Brown, Rice combo. Stingley and Kamari Laddister, they played really well last week, so that's probably going to be one of the bigger matchups to watch in this game. And if you're Houston to kind of keep this game close, you got to find protection. The Chargers, even though the defense gave up 32, granted how that happened with Herbert turning over the ball, you got to be able to protect them because you won't get that same luxury against, a Steve Spagnuolo defense.
It's so funny. So Mel, out west, a diehard Rams fan. Q, remember the narrative back in '89 between LA and Philadelphia? It was Sunnyside. Rams could not come in a cold climate against a tough defense adversary and escape with a victory. The Rams won it 21-7. I remember they were able to run the ball. And the only reason I remember that game is obviously because en route, they beat the Giants on the Flipper Anderson play 19-13 when there was a horrible pass interference call on Sheldon White. But I digress. But I do recall that. Again, that was many, many moons ago. But hey, Mel, I appreciate you tuning in and listening. All right, Washington and the Lions. So this is your house. This is your classic house money, right? Upstart Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels, Quinn, here we go. But then you got Detroit. And I believe Detroit knows exactly what's at stake. You cannot win 13, 14, 15 games in a regular season, clinch home field advantage, and then lose in a divisional round. You can't.
No, you can't. And again, for them, health is a factor. But luckily, I think they'll have Terrion Arnold back. Getting David Montgomery back is huge too, because I think we all thought after that Bills game where he suffered a knee injury that he was probably going to be done for the entire postseason. So to have them back, the key for the Lions is going to be how do you slow down and contain Jaden Daniels? Because the Bucs did a solid job of containing him in terms of on the ground game, but he still had a lot of time in the pocket, to find Terry McLaurin, to find, Diami Brown, who's, got wide open a few times, in that game. And that's been kind of the challenge for this Lions team is that when they went up against, Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, both mobile quarterbacks, they've gotten, I think Allen got 68 rushing yards and like 2 TDs, and Richardson had about 61. So it's going to be interesting to see how Aaron Glenn kind of schemes him up, because you can't scheme him up like how you did Sam Darnold. You gotta, it's going to be a lot of pressure on that defensive line and those, linebackers. And for the Commanders, you're coming in playing with house money, which I think in any sport, that's the most dangerous team to play, because at this point, you got nothing to lose. Like, you go in there and you punch them in the mouth first, and maybe you have a lead at half. That puts now all the pressure on Detroit, to come out in the second half and try to reestablish your dominance.
Well, what typically happens, right? The crowd gets a little antsy. You
Mm-hmm.
start to tighten up. Now, all of a sudden, the 3-point lead turns into a 10-point lead. Now you
Yep.
got to come
And
from
now golf is pressing, and now
correct.
what you talked about on the show for many times, now Dan Quinn is starting to press and go for it
Yep.
multiple
Yep.
times, and we'll see if he makes the right decision,
Yeah, right.
with
Sure.
those
And it could be the
4 points.
recipe for disaster if you're Campbell, if you're overly aggressive,
Mhm.
because that could be the sign of panic right away. And then you've got the Ravens and the Bills. Everyone's billing it, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, whatever. Have fun with that. I just think I, I I've loved what Buffalo's been able to do this year. And I told you, I have gone on the record saying that I believe Josh Allen is the MVP. It's a regular season record, award, pardon me. Man, I'll tell you, he's got to be special on Sunday night because Lamar's special, but I don't want to try to tackle Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, right? And that's where, if this is a 17-14 game and he starts running downhill and Buffalo under 10 to go in the fourth, find themselves down by 10,
Mhm.
possessions are very limited at that point. I'm torn between this one. I wanted to get your take on this game.
Yeah, same. I'm torn on it too because it can go either way, and I think the Pittsburgh Steelers learned that the hard way, right? When Derrick Henry was just first down, he was just getting a ton of yards, and I think the Ravens did a lot of ball control. Coincidentally, the Bills and the Ravens both did a great job of ball control and time of possession, which totally neutralized the Steelers and the Broncos in those games. So I think for the Ravens, I think the key is what are you going to do in the passing game, right? You were able to get by with the Steelers without Zay Flowers. Now Zay probably is looking like he's not going to play,
Which is a big loss.
which is huge because you were able to get by Pittsburgh with that. Now, can you depend on? I think Buffalo's probably going to try to take Mark Andrews out the game. Will this be enough? Will this be a huge game for Isaiah Likely? Will Rashad Bateman come up with those 1 or 2 catches, right? And the ground game, this is going to be, can Derrick Henry and Lamar do it on the ground? And then on the opposite side with Buffalo, James Cook. If James Cook in that running game is going to be huge because this Ravens defense has been pretty good at stopping the run. And then who steps up at wide receiver? Probably Khalil Shakir is probably going to be matched up a lot with Marlon Humphrey, and Knox and Kincaid, probably Roquan and Kyle Hamilton. Do they take advantage of the Brandon Stevens matchup when they do have it? Because even though the Steelers lost that game last week, we did see them find some success when Brandon Stevens was on the field and they went right at him. So I think those are, again, matchups, to watch out for.
They're probably going to have to defensively take a page out of the Steelers playbook because you're going to have to, Buffalo, that is, you're going to have a spy on Lamar Jackson, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's, again, with the RPOs. And I mean, there was a stretch where I think he ran it 6 or 7 straight times.
Yep.
Right?
In the first quarter, I think, to open the game.
And the Steelers had no answer. I mean, that's your punch right to the gut. That's your liver shot that drops you in the first round. And the Steelers really couldn't answer the bell after that. They couldn't get off the mat. Buffalo, I think, is a different team. Buffalo has to score. They have to score earlier in this game. They have to get the juice and the crowd in it. And the elements are not going to bother either team. Let's be honest. And I just feel as though fourth quarter comes, it's Derrick Henry time, man. And he starts running downhill. And all of a sudden, guys, they're like, another half, I can be in the Caribbean in 3 more days. Like, you're almost mentally thinking, all right, am I going to try to wrap this guy up? I'm not 100%, either way. I think it'll be a fascinating matchup. I know I only have you for a couple more moments before we got to hit a break. Real quick, thoughts on Deion Sanders and this flirtation with the Dallas Cowboys? Do you, scale 1 to 10, 10 being, hey man, this is some heavy flirtation right now. Where are you at with Sanders? Can you see an opportunity where Jerry Jones opens up the checkbook and Deion Sanders is head coach of the Cowboys?
I do, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably say like a 6 because I just feel like Deion just enjoys coaching at the college level where he can kind of be in control and run the program the way he wants to, run it, and being able to develop young men to get them to the pros. I think he's obviously going to take the opportunity to talk with Jerry Jones, like we saw in the reports, this week, and people are throwing it out there. Maybe they're throwing it out there too from the Cowboys angle to make it seem like it's a very, extravagant job to take, even though we know it's not, right now. So I think scale of 1 to 10, I would say it's probably like a 6. I don't see Deion, leaving Colorado just yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's I mentioned yesterday. I thought it was a situation where Belichick is still, that contract's not signed, man. I mean, using that leverage, man. Just using that leverage to figure out what's going on in Chicago.
But his girlfriend did say that they're committed to UNC. Take that for what it's worth, man.
Sure. Yeah. Anytime a 24, 25-year-old uses the word committed, then you might have to just kind of question that. All right, 30 seconds, so they don't have to follow you, even though they should, at Jovan10 on X. Player prop 1, 2, or 3. Give me a player prop or props this weekend that you
player props for me. CJ Stroud over 14.5 rushing yards against that KC defense. He's going to have to scramble. He's gone over this number in 5 out of his last 10 games, had 23 against KC in week 16. I'm going to go also to Keon Coleman over 23.5 receiving yards. He's going over this matchup. 7 out of their last 10 at home. He's averaging 38.6 receiving yards per game. And I'm leaning towards Daniels rushing yards at 54 and 55. I haven't really locked into that. And I'm also looking
over 54. Over
54. Wow. Yeah. So I'm leaning towards there, and then I'm also leaning towards Jameson Williams over 4.5 receptions, because he's just been getting a lot of targets over the last 7 weeks. It's kind of been incredible. And for anybody looking at Derrick Henry touchdowns, I would say to get the best value, look at odds if your book has it at first quarter or at first half, because you're likely to get plus money instead of playing a ton of juice on the anytime.
Exactly, for an anytime. Yeah, that's a really good point. What about any first half lines?
Ooh, I don't know. I gotta look, because depending on where they are, like I could see a situation where, depending on what the first half for Washington, I might be interested.
Well, I was just going to say that if Detroit is minus 4.5 first half, guess what? I'm grabbing it.
Yeah.
I'm grabbing it, because you know what happens is teams sometimes they'll play it close, but then, or you look at the second half and then they start to play. That might be a Texans Kansas City.
Yeah, I would say that for either first halves of those games. Now, first half for Eagles, Rams, Ravens, Bills, I don't know. That could be either way for those games.
Yeah, let's just say you wouldn't be backing your play on
those. No, but I back my play on these props 100%.
Oh, come on, a little juice on a Football Friday is our guy, Jovan Alford. All right, everyone give him a follow at Jovan10, fan side at Total Sports Live as well. And I'm sure he'll be tweeting out props as they just come in hot and heavy, as we like to say. Always appreciate a couple moments, brother. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, there you have it. My guy, Jovan Alford, and we'll get him on next week. We'll talk a little NBA, some college hoops with him. Quick timeout. We'll reset the table. You guys can get in on the conversation as well. We're hoping to hear from Lake Lewis. He covers Washington in the NFL. We'll get his thoughts on Daniels, Quinn, the rest of the divisional matchups. And, of course, you guys out there, we will get through your comments. I promise we will get through your comments. Keep it locked in on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q, right here inside the friendly confines of SR1029FMthegame.com. And, of course, SR1029 FM The Game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town. We'll take you up to 6 on a Friday.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Call or text the show at 727-858-6650. Now, back to Q.
All right, 4:40 on a Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Take up to 6. 727-858-6665. Only way Detroit loses if Campbell makes a huge gaffe. Prop takes St. Brown over yards if Lattimore is covering him. That's Trevor. Mickey chiming in early. How about that? Hi, Rich. Hi, guy behind the glass. There you go. I mean, lack of respect for Angel, but again, we have we're accustomed to it, right? We are accustomed to it. Let's see, Joey. Oh, yeah. What do we got there? Joey chimes in. Goal should always be to make Angel laugh. Once he laughs, it's contagious, and Q can't stop. No, that's I can't. I mean, sometimes Angel actually has something funny to say. People were looking for. They were thinking about maybe the trifecta box, not the quad box, but the how about some now reverse mush? Is this? I mean, is that what you're trying to accomplish on your Philadelphia Eagles? I'm really trying to understand. Is it more you don't want the Eagles to win because you don't like Sirianni and you believe if they lose Sirianni is going to get fired? Or we go double box? Hold on, we're going double box right now. This is what happens. We call this the transition in the radio business. Yes.
No, listen, there's been too many people that have been on this high horse from the Eagles from the very beginning. You had mentioned the Commanders winning the division early on before the season started.
Got hammered for even suggesting the Commanders were going to be a playoff team. Got hammered. Instead, I'm getting my balls broke because I was 0 for 3 in NBA plays. But go ahead.
Right. So the way I see it is this team, to me, and even bypass whatever happened last year, I just think the way the Eagles have struggled to play this year, even though they went on a stretch, but either the fast start, slow it down, come back, or the hot start, keep it that way, and then slow down in the second half. This constant up down, it just, to me, if that's the way you're going to start off a game, or you're going to come from behind, then you're going to struggle to be able to win, even if you make it to the Super Bowl. The 2017, that was a complete different setup to win the Super Bowl that year. Go back just a few years ago.
But hold on, I gotta call you out though.
Okay,
this team's better than that team.
Than the 2017 team?
Yes. This team, they can run the friggin' football. They got a 2,000-yard rusher. They got a top 5 defense. They got playmakers all over. No disrespect to Jeffrey and Corey Clement and who else was it? Ajayi Highlight. Who else was it? Right? And you had Foles as a backup. Right. Carson Wentz would have been MVP if he didn't get hurt. Oh, by the way, on the road against the Rams.
Correct.
I believe this team is better. And I also believe if Washington beats Detroit, you might as well bookmark the Eagles into the Super Bowl. There's no way they're going to lose at home. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but they're not losing at home in the NFC Championship. They're not. They're not. And by the way, don't come at me with the crap about who you play on your schedule. Not you. I'm just saying, you can't fault a team for playing who they played. You just can't. That annoys me to no end. You play who's on your schedule, and if you take care of them, you take care of them. I think you are blinded. You are blinded by your hatred of Nick Sirianni, who many people believe he might be a clown from Mulligan Hill. So I believe you're just not a Sirianni fan like I am. But with all that being said, this team is grossly better than 2017. Oh, I think so, Angel. I do.
They might be better, but you still have Jalen Hurts What drives me bananas too is that if there's nothing there, throw the ball away. No, we want to roll right, roll left, go head first, get concussed. It's just, if there's nothing, throw the ball away. What's the point of you constantly getting banged up? You're this late into the season. One good hit on Jalen Hurts.
But that's play calling, though. Sometimes you can't. If it's an RPO, if it's a design RPO, that's just how it is. Sometimes. Let me hold on. 2017, which is amazing, right? Points for 28.6, third of 32. Points against 18.4, fourth of 32. So top 5 defense, top 5 offense. This year, top 2 defense, top 7 offense. And they won 14 games. And again, I'm not going to sit there and say, I think position to position players, that offensive line was fantastic. But the one X factor is Saquon Barkley. That's the one X factor this year in Saquon Barkley. That to me is one of the reasons I think they dwarfed that 2017 team.
Well, no, yes.
I know what you're saying on Jalen Hurts, but if you get hurt, you get hurt. It can happen on any play.
I understand it, but it's at the same time too, if there's nothing there, regardless of the RPO or not, if there's nothing there, throw the damn ball away. No, we want to just keep, let me roll. Nothing there, tackled, boom. Or loss of yards. You run out of the sideline, okay, that's fine. But there's times when you lost 6 to 7 yards because you're trying to make something out of nothing.
I honestly, I really think, with all due respect, I think you're just nitpicking right now. I think perhaps there's subconsciously in your mind, you believe the Rams are going to give them a fight. And there's almost, sometimes you want something to happen so you can come back on the air and say, I told you so. I get it. I'm not suggesting you're doing that right now. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to put up monster numbers.
Correct.
Then live with it. Like if he's 18 of 30 for $188 and 2 touchdowns and they win, and he has one bad throw where he takes one bad sack, but other than that, he didn't turn the football over. He made smart decisions, whether it was checking down, because that's the way the offense was designed in that moment for that game. And when you have Saquon Barkley, your quarterback doesn't need, the way Saquon is playing right now and the way Derrick Henry is playing right now, it's almost a cherry on top that Baltimore has Lamar Jackson playing at such a high level. They're 2 dynamic threats where they can both kill you softly. With the Eagles, it's Saquon. It's 26. That's it. It's feed the beast and get the hell out of the way. I don't need my quarterback to take risk. So I'll agree with you on that. But sometimes you have to take a step back as a fan and say, I need my quarterback to make a play, and it might not go the way I want. Sometimes you just need your quarterback to make a play. And the coach has to entrust the quarterback to make a play. And sometimes, if it's a bad read and a bad throw, then yes, you can get on Jalen Hurts. You can get on the quarterback. You can get on more. You can talk about the decision-making. But other than that, I think you're being way too nitpicky on a Friday.
Okay. Well, you know who will probably back me up? Maybe not. It'll be Mr. Lake, who just joined the program. Maybe he will understand where I feel.
Segues. I'm trying to prop these guys up, and he segue. Let's bring in our good friend. I feel as though this man has just been all over in the DMV, the DC area, national, blowing up. My guy, my good friend. We share the same birthday. That's a start. Our good friend, Lake Lewis, who does a fantastic job. By the way, Commanders haters are getting ready to just pour it on you, my friend, and that's okay. But I won't allow it on a Friday. But of course, my very good friend, always good to hear from him, Lake Lewis, NFL Washington Commanders insider, TV analyst, also the Lake Lewis Show podcast, Sports Journey Radio, sportsjourney.com, back in the saddle, freshly groomed and trimmed. What's going on, brother? How are you?
What's going on, man? How you been? Good to see you.
It's always good to see you. Happy belated New Year and much love and success in 2025. And all right, let's get to it. Let's start with your Washington Commanders. So let me preface this by saying I got hammered in August saying they were going to be a playoff team and actually win the NFC East. Now they're a playoff team. It's a great story. Obviously, we know the difference. The head coach, Jaden Daniels. I believe the the Commanders jump-started their season with that Hail Mary against Chicago, right? We can talk about momentum, but I also saw some things early on with this team that were trending up. When did you look at Daniels and say, okay, you know what? If the pieces are around him in place, this kid's going to be a bona fide star?
I saw very first rookie minicamp practice, literally. I reported out that day. Back in what was that March?
Yep.
I reported out that I couldn't believe what I just saw, and it's my 15th year covering this team, and I've seen all the quarterbacks that have come through here. I mean, I've seen, RG3, I've seen Kirk Cousins, I've seen, Carson Wentz, I've seen Alex Smith, you name it, Rex Grossman, you name it, I've seen it. And I've never seen anything like what I saw that day with Jaden Daniels. And it just hit me that, perhaps they have an it, not just a quarterback that'll be good in a couple of years, that has all the tools to be good. No, I saw something that day that told me he was the best player on the field. Those were with the rookies. Well, a couple of weeks later, when veteran minicamp came and the Bobby Wagners came in and the Zach Ertz, guys that they brought in to show leadership and, success, what it looks like, they were even saying the same thing. Like, this guy's the best player on the field, and it wasn't even close. It just, it hit me that Washington not only nailed their draft pick, their number one draft pick, but they also got lucky in nailing it, because sometimes, you're going to get a good player, and then sometimes you're going to get a generational player. And what they lucked up on was someone that changes the fortunes of a franchise.
Yep.
A guy like a Patrick Mahomes that made Kansas City relevant overnight. A guy like Josh Allen in Buffalo, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, got on the field, halfway through his rookie year.
Oh, yeah.
But he moved out Joe Flacco, who was a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So that's what Washington had. So, yeah, to answer your question, I saw it the first day I saw him in pads.
We always talk about the quarterback to head coach relationship. And last year, look, it didn't work out. Rivera personally. We know he's a great guy. Eric Bieniemy, we've talked about Bieniemy and his faults and why he's not a head coach, and leaving Andy Reid's shadow. You drop 7-8 in a row. Washington does. It's a bad stretch. You bring in the new ownership, you clean the toxicity, you switch the culture around, and then you bring in the right head coach for the job. And I think what exemplified that the most was last weekend. You know what? It's fourth down. We're not taking the points. We're not kicking the field goal. I'm going to entrust my quarterback, which now all of a sudden entrusts 52 other players. We're going to rally behind this kid. Go out and sling it. You have a head coach that has that belief in you as a player. Right there, man, it washes away a decade of futility, washes away a decade of just bad football. He is the right head coach and the right fit for this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, it washes away 3 decades of bad football.
Right.
And the thing is that if you look at Washington by the numbers, they're the best fourth quarter team as far as comebacks. And more importantly, they're also the best fourth down conversion team in the NFL this year. So when you think about those two things, those things normally don't align with the rookie quarterback. Normally you're playing it close to the vest with the rookie quarterback. You punt, you try not to put them in bad situations as far as third and longs and things like that. No, they've entrusted Jaden Daniels from day one. And I can tell you this, I can report this to you guys. This kid knew the playbook before the first game. This virtual thing that he uses, it really helps him. It really does. I think that's going to be a thing now for other teams when they draft these quarterbacks, because they see it works with him. But he's just so prepared. He's never, caught up in the moment. I call him California cool, because, being from California, he's got that vibe to him.
Yes.
Very laid back. And that's just how he is. He's like that off the field as well. In the locker room, he's just a, I don't want to say a goofy, silly kid, but he is. He jokes a lot, and he's just a normal kid. He really is. But when he gets on the field, it's
a poise. There's a poise with him.
Well, he has an assassin in him as well. So it's kind of like, I know it's a different sport, but I'm telling you, I picked up so many Kobe vibes.
I knew you were about to say Kobe.
I really did. I could say Mike and things like that, but to some of the younger folks, they don't remember how great Mike was. Whole nother story. But Kobe, man, he had that killer instinct, and it was just that's what you see with Jaden late in these games. This guy is really feeling like, I'm going to beat you. And I go back to last weekend's game in Tampa when we were there, and he took the hit. He took that hit on the sidelines. Whether it was a late hit or not, unnecessary roughness, he still got popped, and it
Right.
bumped in the air. And I literally said to the person I was sitting next to, that just woke him up. Trust me when I tell you, because he's that competitive, and it just seemed like he needed a hit to get the cobwebs knocked out. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to be the best player on the field, which he was.
So I know you mentioned this the other day, and I had some Commanders fans and some NFL fans chiming in. You mentioned this on your pod we were talking about the coaching carousel in the NFL and the head coaching vacancies and the hot commodities. It's always, the hot names, the offensive coordinators. And I kind of want you to reiterate to the audience the fact that Washington could have made a grave mistake if they went about their business and hired Ben Johnson, who, don't get me wrong, is doing a hell of a job with Detroit as an offensive coordinator, but kind of walk us through that scenario that played out last season.
Yeah, man, and I said it I go on, a guy named Rio Robinson does a phenomenal job on his show, great content guy, on YouTube. Well, he asked me to come on beginning of the season on his show on Tuesday. So we've been doing what we call Victory Tuesdays, and it's been a lot of them. It's been 13 of them to be exact. So, last week we were talking, he was just talking about how, this game could have some karma to it because of how Ben Johnson turned down the team. And I was told by someone that wasn't necessarily the case, that it wasn't so much it was all Ben Johnson turning the team down, but it also was a little bit Adam Peters turning Ben Johnson down because of philosophical difference of Ben Johnson wanting to keep Sam Howell. And I guess they have some history from Carolina. And Adam Peters and knew that he wanted to use that number 2 pick on one of these quarterbacks because there was so many of them last year. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not putting words in Adam's mouth or anything like that, but I know for a fact that they love Jaden Daniels from the jump. And if they had the number 1 pick, they would have taken Jaden Daniels. I'll put my professional livelihood on that quote. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, with that being said, you know, they didn't agree to that. So yeah, I know I made the comment that he said turn the plane around. No, they still had to go interview.
Of course.
Aaron Glenn, I get that. But the point was, it wasn't so much Ben Johnson just spurning Washington. I think it was just a mutual philosophical difference. And if anyone's upset about it, they shouldn't be, because it worked out best for everyone involved. Dan Quinn was the right hire. He's the right guy to lead this franchise going forward, and what they're doing now is special. And Ben Johnson, look at what he's done, in his second go around with the Bears, with the Lions, as far as where he's put them in 2 years, from NFC Championship to being a favorite to get to the Super Bowl. And obviously he's the hot commodity as far as it's going to go coach anywhere. So it's worked out for everyone at the end of the day.
I mean, listen, we see with the coordinators when they have these opportunities and they shine, they're going to attach their names to a lot of potential head coach vacancies. 5:00 straight up on a Football Friday edition of The Drive inside the friendly confines of SR 102.9 FM studios, Southwest Florida's news game in town. We're powered by Coastal Sports Network, Zen Auto Concepts, and of course, fresh roasted coffee. Rich Quinones here. Angel Martinez behind the glass. My guy, Blake Lewis, kind enough to join us. 60 to play with. We'll take up to 6:00. All right. What's the path of victory? I believe that the Lions have pressure, right? You can't win as many games, get home field advantage. Now you're taking on a team that has a little juice, a little momentum, playing with some house money. All of a sudden, it's a 17-13. Washington lead in the 4th. Detroit maybe tightens up a little bit. We'll play that scenario in a moment. But what's the path of victory here for Washington? How do they win?
I mean, I think the first thing is they have to believe they can win. I mean, you can't go into a situation like that, going into a buzzsaw. That's Detroit. That town is a buzz, and that town knows that they're this close to going somewhere they've never gone before. So you have to have the mentality that you can get it done. And from what I saw in practice this week, being in the locker room at practice, those guys, they definitely have a feeling of a quiet confidence that they know that they can win the football game. So, you've gotten past that mental hurdle. But as far as the physical stuff on the field, I think it's two things that have to happen. And if they don't happen, they're not going to win. First thing is you've got to get pressure on Jared Goff because it's almost like, Q, you got to pick your poison. Detroit has this phenomenal running game with Gibbs and Montgomery. Montgomery's back now, healthy and rested. So they're going to run the football. So if you're Washington, you have to say, who are we going to try to take away and make that element of the game beat us? Well, it has to be Jared Goff because Jared Goff's not a guy that, in my opinion, no offense to Jared, because he is a quarterback that's already been in the Super Bowl.
Right.
But he's not a guy that if you put pressure on and you make him beat you doing things that he's not comfortable, that's not within the system that Ben Johnson has in Detroit, I would take my chances with that. It's no disrespect to him. It's just one of the lesser of the two evils. So to me, for Washington, get pressure on Jared Goff, knock him off his spots, make him uncomfortable. And then if you're Washington, you've got to be able to run the football. You have to, because you're going to have to be able to make this game go by quicker. Meaning, when you run the football, the clock runs.
Sure.
And then you try to steal it at the end. That's what their blueprint has been over their past 6 games where they've won these games. They did it in Tampa last week. The game went by really fast. And next thing you know, you're looking up. It's the fourth quarter. Washington gets a turnover, scores, and now things change. So, to me, run the football on offense if you're Washington. Put pressure on Jared Goff if you're on defense.
These types of games, point spread aside, there's always like a quirky play here and there. You mentioned Goff, maybe have him thrown on the back foot, pressuring him, kind of what we saw the Rams do the other night against Minnesota and Sam Darnold.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though this game could come down to special teams.
Oh man, Q. I mean, this is this is why we go back, man. This is why we do what we do. I've already predicted that Jameson Crowder's going to have one. I mean, he's been so close to popping one as a punt returner, and he and I talked about it in the locker room a couple of times. Like, man, you're this close. This could be the game where he pops it. Where he had a really nice one last week against Tampa, I think, for 20-something yards, and it was another one almost most close to popping it. But in a game like this, if you can get a special teams touchdown or big play from your special teams, it just takes the momentum out of the stadium.
Yeah,
and those are the type of plays that a team like Washington's going to need. They're going to need, as you know from doing this so many years, they're going to have to find an unconventional way to
score
make a play in this football game.
Yep. Yeah. Now it's an excellent point. I mean, whether it's a block punt, a block field goal, a long return, short field, something, pick six, fumble return, like you said, maybe a blindside sack of Jared Goff. I asked you who you like in a second, but Texans, I think, are going to need that type of effort against Kansas City. I think the Eagles should be able to run behind Saquon. And then you have the coup de grace, Baltimore and Buffalo. And I mentioned it earlier, and I don't know if you heard, man, I would not be envious of any type of DB or linebacker trying to tackle Derrick Henry late in the fourth. So those other 3 games, give me a quick overview. Who do you like in that Texans-Chiefs game?
I like Kansas City. I mean, they're rested, they're home. They're trying to do something no one's ever done and get that 3-peat. The Texans seem to have kind of rebounded a little bit over the last 2 weeks, got their feet back under them. But I just think that Kansas City's the better football team. And I think it'll be close, throughout a half. And then in the third quarter, you'll start to see Kansas City pull away. It might be one of those games Kansas City wins by 10, 13, but it'll feel like it's much more. Like they'll always be in control. So I definitely see them winning that game. As far as the Eagles and Rams, I don't think the Rams. I think Matt Stafford's playing well. That's why he's Matt Stafford, and Sean McVay is going to be able to dial up some things early. The Eagles are just too talented and loaded, and they're at home. And there's something about teams from the West Coast coming to the East Coast. You know how that goes. So I think the Eagles win that game. And then, the Buffalo Ravens game, which to me, outside of the game I'm covering, of course, is the must-see football game. Man, that one's a tough one, but I think Baltimore is going to win the game. I just think that, I picked Baltimore and Detroit to go to the Super Bowl when the season started. I might change one, but I still have Baltimore going to the Super Bowl, and I have Baltimore winning the whole thing. I really do. And I don't see any reason to think that that can't happen. Matter of fact, I think the winner of this Buffalo Ravens game might dethrone Kansas City. I truly believe that.
Listen, if they're going to go out, if they're going to die, they're going to die with their sword on Kansas City. And I tend to agree. It pains me to see what Saquon's doing with the Eagles. But again, he's not going to do that with the Giants. They're going to run him into the ground, 2,000-yard rusher. Hurts doesn't need to make a lot of plays. 727-858-6650. How does Lake feel about Eagles fans living in the DMV?
Well, I have family that live in Philly, and a good chunk of my family live up in Germantown and Mount Airy, Wissahickon, and I'm a Penn State alum, so I got the Pennsylvania connection. But I mean, listen, man, Philly fans are very, they're just they're intense. Say it that way. They're intense fans, so I've learned to deal with them over the years, and that's just the way it is, man.
I look at this, Trevor's. I see a lot of Eagles jerseys in the DMV. Snyder really set the team.
Yeah, but that's going to change though, because
Yeah.
I can safely say the game here a couple of weeks ago where we came back. I know Jalen Hurts got knocked out the game, but
Great game.
the Philly fans out there, your number one defense gave up over 30 points. So
That's right.
So it wasn't Jalen Hurts being out the
3 touchdowns in the fourth. Well, how many touchdowns in the fourth quarter?
3.
Yeah. Right.
So,
I mean, that's Montana-esque back in the vet years ago. Yeah.
Absolutely, but 5 overall. So yeah, I mean the kid was phenomenal that day. So the point is, it wasn't as many Eagles fans as it has been over the years, and that's because this team is winning now here, and they have an electric superstar. So I think all that's going to change. It's going to get back to the old days where when you came to Washington, it was just like going into New York, going into Philly. You're going to clearly be outnumbered by the home fans. That's the way it's going to be going forward, and especially with them getting a new stadium soon.
Yeah. I am curious to get your thoughts on a couple of things. Obviously, I get the sense you're leaning towards Washington pulling off the upset on the road.
My mind is telling me that that's what I believe. And it's funny. My heart, you would think, would be Washington, being from here, covering them. My heart is actually telling me, obviously, Detroit's, they're legit. But man, I got to tell you, it's something about this Commanders team that you just can't write off. And they have 13 wins. It's not like they're going into this thing with 8 wins and they backed in. They have 13 wins, and the other games that they lost, the game against Dallas, that was a missed extra point that they should have won that game. They should have beat Pittsburgh. They were up 10 on them in the fourth quarter. The only bad game they played was week 1 against Tampa, and they just avenged that last week. So what I'm saying is, Rich, it's one of those things where when you have one of those guys at quarterback, not a good quarterback, but an elite caliber talent at quarterback, you have an opportunity. And I keep saying this. If that kid is the best player on any given Sunday on the field, Washington wins the game. Simple as that. If he's no worse than the second best player, they have an opportunity to win the game.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like they have an opportunity to win Saturday night, tomorrow night.
Yeah, and they played Baltimore tough, and you mentioned the Tampa Bay game, but then they ripped off 4 straight. I mean, that's the thing. Like the other thing which shows coaching and overcoming it, right? You lose to Pittsburgh, they lose to Pittsburgh, the Eagles, and Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do? Some teams kind of crawl under a rock, young teams. They beat the Titans, the Saints, the Eagles, the Falcons, the Cowboys. They ripped off what they needed to rip off to get to 12-5, to obviously put themselves in a position to have the big win against Tampa Bay, and now have an opportunity to pull off the upset. I know you are a college guy as well, so I want to pick your brain on a couple things. Bill Belichick has not signed his contract with UNC. So I mentioned yesterday on the air, I believe he's using that as leverage in some way, shape, or form, as if to remind people, I'm still desirable, I'm still here. And I also thought the Mike Grable domino that drop with New England, wink, wink, kind of was a snowball effect with teams firing coaches because they thought they would have an opportunity with this guy. So do you believe Belichick come September will be on an NFL sideline, or will he be in Chapel Hill?
That's a great question. And I've thought the same thing too. It's not that he's going back to college. It's where he's going to college. No offense to North Carolina. They're never going to be a football school. That's a basketball school. And for the life of me, I'm like, there are other opportunities that he could have taken that would have had a lot more cachet for him. I don't care how old he is. This is one of the greats, one of the top 2 or 3 coaches of all time, to be going to a school that's not considered a top 25 blue chip football program. So that was surprising. And it did make me believe that perhaps didn't we see the story with the same gentleman, with the Jets or whatever, or he had an offer on the table that he took and something else came and then he left and he went somewhere else. So yeah, maybe it could be leverage. Are you telling me that Vegas or someone like that, if they don't really come calling and offer the right amount of money, he's a pro coach. He's not a college football coach.
Correct. And he wants to beat Shula's record.
Yeah,
He's made
of
it
course
known.
he does. Anyone that says he's not worried about that, that's not true. If you're a competitor, that's what left is there for you to
That's
do?
it.
Come on.
That's it. Which is crazy because if you actually add up all of Andy Reid's postseason wins along with the regular season, he's sitting at 299, which is remarkable.
It really is. And, it just goes to show you sometimes a change of scenery is necessary. Andy Reid had great success in Philadelphia. I hope fans there give him his flowers because, he took, 4 teams to an NFC championship game, went to a Super Bowl. During the time when the Eagles weren't necessarily, let's be honest, they weren't necessarily considered kingpins in the NFC, not even in their own division.
No.
Back in the day, the division used to go through the Giants, Washington, and the Cowboys. The Eagles were always the afterthought.
Correct.
So now they're the kingpin. And to go back to that whole thing about Eagles fans in Washington, they give me a lot of grief because I think they see what's starting to develop, that Washington might be a real player against them over for years to come.
That's what happens when you have the right hit
Yeah.
with your draft pick and your quarterback, right? Which is something that,
that your boy get right this year.
Yeah, haven't figured out. All right, Dion. This flirtation right now, we call flirtation, maybe a little heavy petting. Who knows? At this point, I think it would be a bad fit. I just don't. There's not enough airspace for those egos, if that makes sense. And I'm just wondering, go with someone that's familiar or has familiarity within that franchise. That would be Kellen Moore.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go that route, I mean that probably would be, Kellen Moore probably would take the job and deal with Jerry because see that's the elephant in the room right there. Regardless who takes that job, you still have to understand it's not your team; it's Jerry Jones' team.
Yeah.
And so that man, we don't want to mention anyone passing, but he's getting up there in age. And that's the only way it's going to ever change, is when he's no longer able to put his fingerprints on things. So, for Dallas and Dion, I don't see that as a fit. I don't. I think Dion would be disappointed sometimes with some of the play or some of the effort or lack of, and knowing how much guys are getting paid. I mean, he's actually said that out of his own mouth. And I think, for Dion to leave Colorado, I think the ideal job for him would be the Florida State job. And I think Norville, because of what's happened over the last 2 years, he's on the hot seat. You can believe it. And I'm sure there are people, whether his seat was even lukewarm, would want Dion instead. Because think of Dion and NIL and recruiting in the state of Florida where he's from. That could be an interesting thing. So, and I know Bobby Bowden had wanted him to get the job there and all those things before he passed. So I could see Dion in Florida State before I could Dallas. If he ends up in Dallas, I just don't see that turning out the way that, Cowboy fans would think.
Does the NFL need to get rid of the Rooney Rule?
Yeah, I listen, as an African American, I've said it a long time ago, it should have never been implemented because when you do that, I know some other black folks that I know, like, how can you say that? We need things to give us the opportunities. We absolutely do, but we don't need things that will be turned against us because the Rooney Rule, the spirit of it was phenomenal. The Rooneys in Pittsburgh, God bless them. They had the right intent. But what's happened is it's become one of those, let me go ahead and interview Lake over here so I can get that Rooney Rule out of the way. Because they have no desire to hire an African-American coach. So the problem just has to be, if you want to look at the makeup of teams, you can look at the makeup of what's on the field playing, and we've seen the league now go to predominantly African American quarterbacks, something we never thought we'd say. So if coaches are dumb and they see that they can't, do that when the coaching staff ranks too, then they're probably not going to have success on the field, and everything will take care of itself. But I'm pretty sure a guy like Brian Flores is going to be a hot commodity to get back into the coaching ranks. So there are going to be some guys out there. Mike Tomlin will still be in Pittsburgh. I don't think he's going anywhere. So you do have all these guys. I'd like to see Aaron Glenn get an opportunity because he's done phenomenal stuff with the Lions. So there are guys that are out there. But yeah, to answer your question, the rule isn't doing anything. So, but the intent of it was there. But they have to figure something out. I mean, if you want to start docking teams' draft picks, or something like that, where it hits them in the pocket, hits them on the field. Not to force them to hire anyone
Right.
that's black or
Right.
Asian, or
Right.
anything,
Right.
but something that makes you know that there was a fair opportunity in an interview process, then I would be okay for something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because you mentioned too, like it's in place for certain reasons. And obviously it's just, I feel as though a lot of stuff is kind of like wink, wink, under the table, good old boys network. You kind of already know what direction you're going to
Absolutely
go.
do.
And it didn't help when the Giants hired Brian Daboll and you had to mix read with the text messages and Belichick and then Flores. And Flores is an interesting candidate because we see, what he's been able to do defensively. And okay, do we forget about the lawsuits and stuff? And then you mentioned Aaron Glenn, drafted by the Jets, high level, understands the NFL, understands scouting, understand the workings, the inner workings. I think he would make a hell of a head coach. But then it always goes back to a guy like Eric Bieniemy, who you and I know for a fact just does not interview well. And you just can't, I can't give you the keys to my car if you don't know how to friggin' drive.
Yeah, and that's fair. I've always said this: put me in an interview process and I'm going to get the job. That's the confidence I have in myself. That's the belief that I have that I'm the right person for the job, or I wouldn't be going for it. And so I've always said, you know, put me in the situation and I'll come out victorious. And I think a lot of minorities and females, I think a lot of us feel that way, but some of us don't get the call to interview, and that's the problem. When you see the same people being interviewed, then it's a farce. So if it's interview A, and that black coach is interviewed with teams all over the years, then okay, this is a farce. They're just checking off the box. But if it's hey, the special teams coach for the Ravens or something like that, like a Harbaugh who was special teams guy in Philadelphia, like people in Baltimore are like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
That's when someone dug deep to do what they were doing. The Giants probably felt like they were doing that with Judd, or Joe Judge or whatever. Did I say that right? Yeah, Joe Judge. And that didn't work. So
It didn't work with Shermer. It didn't work with Judge. I was surprised they brought back Dable and Shane because they're lame duck GM and head coach. And the one thing I would say to counter that, talking about the interviews, people always will comment or they'll text or they'll shoot me a message. Why should I interview when I know I'm not getting? Well, first of all, we've had interviews. You and I have talked about it for the years where we've gone to outlets, we've sat there, we've interviewed well, we walked out and we said, there's not a chance in hell they're hiring us. But we still, you still have to take the interview, because then if you get the reputation of someone that's shunning opportunities. There's only 32 vacant, or 32 head coaching jobs, I should say, Lake. I mean, you know this as well as I do. You know damn well as well as I know. If you have an opportunity, even if you don't think you're getting the job, take it.
yeah,
But the rule was in place to help minorities to level the competitive, the playing field.
well, it was to shatter the good old boy ceiling too, and but you have to understand, when you're dealing with business owners, you own a business, I own a business. When you're a business owner, you're going with what your gut instinct
Of
is.
course.
And it's
And you have
not
a
what,
right. You have a right to do that.
yeah, you do, and it's not what somebody's telling you your gut instinct should be. But if I know on paper that I have 5 candidates that I have to interview, when my mind says I'm already set on candidate A, Well, you know what? Then when those other interviews are made, you might walk away saying, you know what? Candidate B over here had, just we connected. And that's what it's about. It's about just having an open mind. And unfortunately, some people don't have open minds when their mind has never experienced anything outside of themselves.
100% fair point. Is it also the optics and the perception? Like you look at the Patriots, everyone knew it was a handshake deal. They knew when I keep harping on this and I get pushback, and I really want people to understand where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Mayo was a bad hire. You want
Yeah.
to play cards on the plane and not watch. I said it in the beginning. It was a debacle, the roster building, the coaching staff. They were going to be a bad football team. They're a bad football team, and he had to take the brunt of it. He's not a good head coach. He might be a good head coach down the road. Bad position. Kraft put him in. They didn't help him out. Needed to make a change.
Yeah.
Once they fired him, though, you almost knew what's the next logical thing. Let me grab another player that had success, because it's hard to go back to a franchise where you had a lot of success and be a head coach and then be successful, because if you fall on your ass, you're not going to get too many opportunities. But they knew they needed to, wipe out that bad taste and bring in, the guy's guy, right? Mike Grable. So I feel as though, did the Patriots in some way, shape, or form make a mockery of what the Rooney Rule is supposed to do?
Yeah, they did in some capacity, because their first mistake to me was still living under Belichick, and you didn't want Belichick. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You don't want the prophet. You want one of his apostles. And now you go out and get another apostle. The point is, if you want that type of religion in your building, you should have kept the prophet himself. That's how I look at it. So that was a mistake. So the second big mistake was you hired a guy that had never coached before as a head coach, and you're drafting a franchise caliber rookie quarterback who you knew had to hit the field at some point this
Right.
year. Those type of players, those type of young guys need someone that's stable, someone that knows how to coach as a head coach, take pressure off them. And no offense to Jared, as far as Jared Mayo, but he didn't have that experience yet.
No.
He'll be better for his next opportunity if he gets one. So Vrabel makes perfect sense. It should have been what they did initially, because he was out there. So it should have been what they did initially. I do think it's a good move for New England. Just when you look at it from a pure X's and O's, it's good. It's a demographic hire as well. Let's just call it like it is. Just like Drake May is a demographic draft pick. I mean, come on, man. You have to cater to your markets. You really do. I think sometimes the Giants get caught up in that. Ironically, that's your team. People keep saying, do you think Mara will draft an African American quarterback? Well, if he wants to win and he looks in his division, that's what's winning in his own division. So
It's tough. It's tough going down that rabbit hole, man, because again, it's, there's that fine line, right? We have to be careful how we position that and say it, because then it can be misconstrued of the Giants don't want
I
to
could
hire
get
a
in big
black
trouble
quarterback.
with the league.
What's that?
And I could get in big trouble with the league.
But that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I understand what you're saying, and people have been wondering, okay, we know the new breed of quarterback. I'm not talking white, black. I'm talking about an athletic, mobile
Quarterback. Right.
Right. Right. And if it just happens to be white, black, yellow, whatever, the Giants, do they need to think outside the box? Yeah, I do. I believe that. I think the Giants need to think outside the box. Now, I think that they need a quarterback, but I also believe that they're it's the generational fans and these teams that have had a lot of success, but haven't had it in 15 years, like the Giants, like the Jets. I think sometimes they go safe. And in today's world, you can't always play it safe. You have to take a risk. And if it backfires, it backfires. Like when they're 2-7 after 9 games next year, and you come on the show during the week, I'm going to sit there and say, Lake, what the hell was the point of even bringing these guys back? They're 2-7 again. They should have cleaned house and fired them. Now, I don't know what direction they're going to go in the draft. If I had my pick, whether it's Sanders or Ward, I personally go Ward. If you
You
really,
have to. You have to. And
yeah,
I'm glad you're bringing that up, because when you say play it safe, and so for people to know that we're not race baiting here, we're saying, I think the Giants need what you said. They need a versatile, mobile, athletic quarterback to compete in this division. They have to. And to me, the best person on the board to do that is Cam Ward.
yeah.
It's not Shador Sanders. It's not Quinn Ewers. It's not Carson Beck. It better not be Carson Beck. So the point is, I think Cam Ward is your guy if you're New York. If he's there, he might not
Right,
be.
right, right.
Um, and I believe, because personally, I don't think this quarterback class this year is anywhere nearly as good as last year's class. So you've got to nail your pick if you're going to go
And
quarterback
I
for.
think they're gun shy. I think what happens is teams start to get gun shy. Oh, here we go. We had a reach with Gettleman and Daniel Jones. We shouldn't have drafted Saquon where we did. You don't draft a running back top 5. You look at Cleveland over the years, always missing. You look at the Jets, always missing. There are some teams that just miss. And it's, this, the toughest thing to do is replace the guy who was the guy, right? And if you don't have a freaking quarterback in this league, you're not winning. You're just not winning. Daniel Jones got paid off a very good season by his standards and winning a playoff game. The worst thing that happened to the franchise was that they arrived too quickly. See, the difference is Washington won a playoff game. Now, I'm not going to say Washington's going to be in that same boat if they were to get blown out by Detroit. But you hear where I'm going with this?
Of
First
course.
time head coach, Dable, Quinn, quarterback, young guy. You win a playoff game. Sometimes it could be your detriment. And maybe we overvalue that. Show me what you can do next season, then I'll keep my mouth shut. Jones got hurt. I think Daniels has, the trending up where he's going to have a really wonderful career in the NFL. And I hope the kid stays healthy. But to your point, franchises get gun shy. Look at
Yeah.
all the quarterbacks that Washington went through over 15, 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, and also a lot of that was attributed to bad, personnel
Of
decisions.
course.
So, I think with the Giants, they should look at Washington, in the breath of in Denver, as well. They should look at
Yeah.
teams as, if we just do our due diligence here and do this right, we can get a really good quarterback to come in here. The rest is called coaching and culture and all those things, which are a lot of things that the Giants still have to repair. We know that. So, there's an opportunity for the Giants to get their guy for next year, but they're going to have to do what they haven't done in the previous years, and that's spend a lot of their draft time and effort on a quarterback, scouting these guys and figuring it out, because they've just put everything on Daniel Jones over the previous few years. And, we know how that ended with him just walking, which was terrible. You got nothing for him or Saquon for
Or
that.
Saquon for that matter.
That's
And
just, that's lunacy right there.
yeah. And there are some teams that are in quarterback purgatory. Cleveland's one of them. Cleveland's one of them. The Jets, I mean, everyone's waiting to see what Rodgers is doing, because Rodgers, his moves are contingent upon if they're going to hire his guys as head coach and GM. Enough. Like, seriously.
It's time for them to move on from Aaron Rodgers
Uh,
and just start it off anew.
Yeah, no, it's long overdue, but you know this as much as I do. The NBA is a players-driven league. If the player doesn't like the coach gets fired. In the NFL, the coach isn't getting fired. More times than not, the player gets released, cut, traded, benched. I mean, that's just how it is. You've got, lastly, before I let you get out of here, and I appreciate the extended time because I know how tight we are, but I'm very appreciative of it. Best landing spots right now, right? Chicago, the Jets, the Raiders, Jacksonville, New Orleans, insert whatever team that has that vacancy. If you're a potential head coaching candidate, what are you weighing? You speak to a lot of GMs, you speak to a lot of former GMs. What are you looking for?
Man, I need to have a couple pieces already in place for me, and then I'm going to go out and bring my quarterback in. And all those teams you just named, there's probably only one or two. Chicago now because of Caleb, of course. But is Trevor really the guy in Jacksonville long term? He got a big time contract to be, but Trevor hasn't done anything. Derek Carr, is he really the long term answer in New Orleans? Derek Carr's a good quarterback when he can stand upright, but he does get hurt a lot. So, those are all teams that have some pieces New Orleans is a little bit more on the older side now. So I think the obvious choice for me, the two places that if I can be a head coach right now, number one would be Chicago because you got a young quarterback. Number two would be New York because you have the markets, you have the fan base, and I mean the Jets, and you have some studs on both sides of the ball if they can be coached right. And then I think the Raiders are kind of like a very interesting setup because of the stadium, and Brock Bowers had a great rookie season, so they've got a couple pieces there. But yeah, I think all of those teams outside of Chicago would have to start with a coach that can get the best out of a young quarterback because that's the way the game's going now. It's almost like now you don't have to wait like we used to when we were younger, Q. You waited 3-4 years for your draft pick quarterback to develop. No, these guys are entrusted with the keys to the city from day one. And that's only because the coaches that are drafting them feel like they can get these guys up to par and get them ready to perform. And that's just how it is because let's face it, these guys are running glorified college offenses now,
Yeah.
so they can come in and learn the pro elements of the pro game offensively, but still have a lot of what worked for them in college implemented into their system to make them more comfortable.
It is definitely right now sink or swim with these quarterbacks. And sometimes you trade those draft picks. Maybe you build a little equity in the bank so you don't have to pay these guys. But for every Purdy and Brady, there's, your Josh Rosens and or your Daniel Jones, right? Sometimes you just,
You miss.
you miss big time, swing and a miss. Lake Lewis, give him a follow on X and of course IG at Lake Lewis Jr. NFL Washington Commanders Insider TV analyst Lake Lewis Jr. show podcast where you get your pod as well. Also follow sportsjourney.com, Sports Journey Radio. He does a fantastic job not only covering the NFL, covering Washington, NBA. I know we're going to dive into that shortly. Obviously, your Commanders keep having a run, so I can look like a friggin' genius here. But I always appreciate it. When will you fly out for the game?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning?
Yep.
Okay.
So these things get expensive after a while, man.
Hey, man, yeah, listen, they keep receipts, man. We call them write-offs.
Yeah. Somebody was like, "Oh, I know you want to go to LA, for other reasons, as you
Yeah.
know." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I next week I'd like to go right up the street to Philly. I can drive for that."
Yeah. But, hey, listen, you might have to bring the fur out. You might have to bundle up this weekend, right?
Yeah, it's in Detroit though. It's fortunately we're inside, but next week if they were to win,
That's true.
I know it sounds like wishful thinking,
Yeah.
man. They have an opportunity in Detroit. Detroit's the better football team. Make no mistake about it. But sometimes when you're hot, and when you have things going for you, and you're playing with house money, you have nothing to lose. They're playing fun and free and fast,
Yep.
and they've got a great young quarterback. And as long as you got that guy on the field, you have an opportunity. So we're gonna see how this plays out.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. You get to that fourth quarter, it's a 21-17 Washington
Then
lead when under 7
Detroit
to
goes
go.
home. Then Detroit's going home.
Yeah, you know what I'm
I have
saying?
no problem saying that. If this
Yeah,
game comes down 3 minutes, 4 minutes
yeah,
left,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Washington has a chance to take a lead or
yeah,
tie,
yeah, yeah.
Detroit's in
Yeah.
trouble. They didn't take care of business at that point.
100%, and
Yeah.
that's when you get into 3rd and 8 and Daniels breaks it off for 17. You're like, I can't freaking catch this kid. Right. So, but, all right, listen, brother, much love to you and respect as always, my man. Hopefully I will see you very soon. I know you're racking up the, frequent flyer miles, but, always appreciate you jumping on board and, have fun down there in Detroit.
All right, my friend. Good seeing you, man. Keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you. All right, my man. There you have my guy, Lake Lewis, man. Share the same birthday. We always say mother from another. That's my Lake is fantastic. He is fantastic. He's been covering Washington and the NFL now, and he started out his platform was Sports Journey Radio, and he started to do that. Build a website like you did. Start to get credited like you are continuing to do, and just grinding and grinding and grinding, man. And now he's doing some national spots. He's doing a ton of radio. He's doing national hits. He's an anchor. And yeah, he's we always have fun on the air. We'll start to take each other down the rabbit hole a little bit, and then we'll see who can kind of get down the hole fast as we start to dive into certain topics, because we'll touch on certain things, i.e. like the Rooney Rule. Him and I went back and forth years ago with Penn State and everything happening. He's a Penn State guy, and I remember going on the air and just ripping and blasting Penn State and Sandusky, and he didn't condone any of it. But we very strong opinions, and that's what we want. And I think he's objective when he speaks about the NFL and the Commanders. And look, when you've covered a team that's been so bad for so long and you start to get a little hint and glimpse of glory and good football, you certainly enjoy it from a media standpoint, but he kind of laid it out. And if this is a 21-17, 23-20 type of game, Detroit's defense is on their heels in the fourth quarter, went under 5 to go, and Washington has the ball. I would take my chances with Jaden Daniels in Washington in that spot. That's just me.
No, he was listening. Tons and tons of knowledge that he dropped. Good points too with the Rooney Rule. You can't argue the point that he had made. I think if anybody explained it as eloquent as they possibly could, Lake did. He did a really good job talking about it. But listen, the Commanders are still alive. No matter what, as you said in the very beginning before the season even started, they're still around. Would they? I think that would be the shock and awe of the season if they go to Detroit and take Detroit down. Then at that point, you really got to look at the Commanders like, maybe they are.
And then all bets are off, Angel.
Right.
100%. All bets are off. If they beat Detroit, there's no reason to sit there and say they can't go into Philly and beat the Eagles. If the Eagles get past the Rams. Because we know that the Texans beating Kansas City would be a big – see, not a lot of people are bringing this up. If the Texans beat Kansas City –
right.
Now, mind you, that game is Saturday, 4:30. So Texans beat Kansas City. They knock the Chiefs out. No more back-to-back-to-back. No threat of a three-peat. You know what the Ravens and the Bills are thinking? We might not get another chance. Like, this is when, when the NBA, when Jordan decided to retire and all these teams are like, this cat's out.
Yeah.
Like, if not now, when?
Yep.
And that's how, and the Texans, I believe the Texans will play within themselves. CJ Stroud, you're ratcheting up the defense a little bit on the road. Kansas City, I think it's going to be a different animal. But the other 3 games, man, your guess is as good as mine. Washington can beat Detroit. The Rams can go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles. And Baltimore and Buffalo, you might flip a coin.
Yeah. No, very much. If Kansas City, of course, they're lucky right now because they've had 3 weeks off. There's been times where we've seen teams, even they've had only 1 week off, and they had that bye week and just flat out didn't play. But a team that has 3 weeks in a row off, you're the team now that has to come to their house and try to knock them off their perch. It's going to be extremely, extremely hard to do. Could the Texans do it? Possibly. Is it impossible? Not really. But Andy Reid has become some crazy savant when it comes to the playoffs. Couldn't do it in Philly, but Lord knows he's getting it done in Arrowhead out in Kansas City. So this is going to be a really solid matchup this weekend, and we will see the true outcomes of who's going to represent in the Super Bowl this weekend.
5:35. We got about 20 to play with.
Oh boy.
We'll take you up to 6. Broadcaster cable system has issued a required weekly test for the following comment sections. SR1029 YouTube. Will the stripper joke go through today? We might hit it by 6 o'clock. We just don't know. What is that? This is actual test. Beep. The emergency broadcasting system. Dion hates FSU now. Yeah, but when you open up that checkbook, that's a totally different animal. All right, quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. We will do our picks for the divisional round, brought to you by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Got to remind everyone, top you off, hun? Freshen you up a little bit? Add a little more? Fresh Roasted Coffee, 20% off with our Back Your Play segment coming up in about 5 or so minutes as we take up to 6 o'clock straight up. Don't forget to use the promo code BYP20. That'll save you 20% off your first purchase of Fresh Roasted Coffee. We know it's winter. We know you guys are freezing your heinies off. Why not have a nice little hot cup of Java, a little Joe, little hazelnut, little caramel, a little vanilla, a little pumpkin. Ooh, I love myself some pumpkin spice. I had people tell me that it's soft to me that I like pumpkin spice hot coffee.
Really?
Yeah, I was not happy with that comment.
Why?
I got caught out because I like pumpkin spice.
That's a bizarre comment, though. So what? So you like pumpkin spice? Yeah, it's another flavor. Does it really matter?
Listen, we are equal opportunity on this show, on this network, even though when it comes to some of these goofball comments.
That's why we have to have that adult conversation.
Oh, which, by the way, we are going to have that coming
Yes.
back on the other side. 20 to play. We'll take you up to 6 on a Friday.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All right, class. Let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock and saw all these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Download the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game app and tell your friends that Florida has a new leader in digital sports radio.
All right, 5:41 on a Frig Friday edition. The drive. Hey, don't forget, we'll do our picks in a moment, but we do have to get a little clarity on a couple things. We have to have a grown man conversation right about now. So there's been issues with the, I guess you can say, the structure of when the listening audience texts and comments in. We're about to get an appearance, by the way. When the listening audience texts and comments in. And I've tried to explain to them that we get to the comments the way we get to the comments. The commenters do not control the airways or the show. The hosts control the content, the commenters, and the flow of the show. And some, I'm just letting you know, some feel as though they are slighted. They don't get equal airtime. And they would like for you to address it.
Oh, thank you. Nice way to toss it off. All right. I'll top you off, honey. That's okay. No, so the way it works is that now every show, of course, is completely different. I usually try to on every, so boy, here we go. As it already starts. It's different on every show is completely different. Obviously, Pete, in the morning, you know, I try to bring up as many.
They're not concerned about Pete.
I understand it, but
the company. They want to know what's going on from 4 to 6, Monday to Friday. See that? You just now see what happens right there? What I'm going to let you explain right now. Excuse me.
What ends up happening is obviously we have a guest on. It's up to the host as he or she would be on. In this case, it's just the males that we have here in house. As the host is talking to the guest, if there's a guest related question, the host will try to make it to a point where they can bring up said question. Now, if I happen to notice it, I try to bring it up, or I'll send, for example, Q a message to let them know, hey, by the way, you might want to check out the comment or the question is up there.
What makes it so funny that you actually feel compelled to explain yourself.
Well, because listen, if I'm trying to be thorough with folks, it's just what we end up doing here.
Now, here's the bottom line. I'm going to explain to you what we do from 4 to 6. We
Sure.
choose who we want to give flowers to. Period. Period. If you're not coming in with a strong take or opinion or something of comic relief, guess what? We're not firing off the comment. And here's the thing. This is what happens now. They start to trend into your direction. You know what they're like? They're like kids. They're like children. They're playing mom against dad. That's exactly what they're doing. They all want their shine. That's all they want. They all want their shine. Of course, Angel is a stand-up guy. Last time I checked, I'm a stand-up kind of guy.
It's what happens on a Friday.
See, this is what happens. This is why we have to limit certain comments. Representative of over.
Oh boy,
that's a shot. And you the bad man on a Friday, talk little diner talk, little food, topping you off, a joke here and there. Takes a shit like that.
Hold on, did you see that one earlier? Let me bring this one up. Ex-Madman. He says, Angel, don't turn into Bunker Boy and go into hiding. Oh my God, he's gone.
Oh, wow. See, this is now, the Eagles fans have been very quiet. No, but there's no great and powerful. I'm just saying how it is, man. The inmates don't friggin' run the asylum. That's it. Once that happens, all is lost. When you have that happen, there's no structure, there's no organization, and then what happens? There's chaos. No, you will not get to try window on this Friday. All right, but we do know. Yeah, go ahead.
Guess from a guy who's been patiently waiting. He started off his comment early in the show. He said, "What's up, Q, my man? How you doing, buddy? It's GBG texting on the burner." For those who missed it yesterday, we talked about the burner phones. And then he followed up with, "That bugged me too." This is an earlier conversation about all the time that people think just because you play a crap team or whatever, that you're not good, but you hold up against a good team and you're still crap. I mean, I don't understand it. So that was much earlier.
It's funny that you bring that up. So like even the man mentioned faulting teams for having a soft schedule. You're mentioning it because they may struggle against good teams. The first playoff game was unsettling, to say the least. I'm assuming he's talking about the Eagles before. But I feel as though that is a misconception. Like if you win, you win. Like eventually, okay, the offense, we know Eagles offense at times can be a slow starter. Correct. But I don't care who you play. I don't. This whole, if you beat teams, you beat teams. And then if you face a good team, maybe you just weren't as good as that team. Like the whole fraudulent conversation, this, that, the other day, everyone's looking at Minnesota and the Rams as that barometer. And the Rams defense just kicked the snot out of the Minnesota offensive line and made life miserable for Darnold. But they still won, 13, 14 games? I can't call them a fraud.
Right.
Steelers I can call a fraud. I mean, Vince hasn't chimed in, so I'm going to call the Steelers a fraud.
Where is Vince?
Hey, listen, these guys are working hard, man. That's all we can ask for them. Hey, by the way, our BYP picks, which we're going to get into, they are brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports Mount. Laura, they're offering, if you go to Facebook right now, one lucky winner, $100 gift card. All you have to do is enter to join their email club. Be sure to choose the Mount Laurel location. Sign up. Members are the first to know about sales, events, and any other special things we have on deck. And you know what? I want to fire off my friggin' music on this Friday because it is a football friggin' Friday, a what the frig Friday edition of The Drive with Q. And we always talk about our picks. We've been on absolute fire. Player props 3-0. Forget about the NBA last week. It doesn't matter. Our BYP segment of our picks for a divisional matchup in the NFL. Angel, where the players always back their play. Got a crescendo. Sands. All right, I mentioned you, the Texans and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are laying 8 in this one. Kansas City looking to go back to back 3 times. Trifecta, tres, I tell you. It's all Mahomes. It's all the ground game. It's all Kelsey. This will be a close game going into the half, but Kansas City in that playoff moxie will pull away. I think they're going to make life miserable for Stroud. You can see a pick or two in this one. Give me Kansas City. 31 17. Washington against Detroit. I feel as though I've been on that Lions bandwagon, laying 9.5. I love Washington, Jaden Daniels, Quinn. They can run the football. They're a great story. Is it just possible this is Detroit's year? All the pressures on Detroit, 15-2, 7-2 at home. Dan Quinn being aggressive. Jared Goff, go win the friggin' big game. They got a good running back, wide receivers, tight end, Motor City. They haven't tasted any type of success in like 50-something odd years. The Lions will beat Washington and end the Commanders' Cinderella story. It's not going to be easy, though. I think it's going to be a white knuckler. I think it might come down to special teams. 33-30, the Lions win this one. The Rams and the Eagles. Eagles laying 6.5. It's pretty simple. Give the Duke to number 26. Run Saquon 25 plus times. Jalen Hurts does not have to go and be this quarterback that's going to sling it 30 times. If they're down 17-3, don't panic. Run the football. Play sound defense. Keep it a low-scoring game. I don't believe the Eagles cover, but I think the Eagles win this game 21-17. It pains me to say that. And then the final game, as we close it out, the Ravens and the Bills. 2 quarterbacks at the highest level, 2 MVP candidates. You know what I feel about Josh Allen, the man crush. You know I love Buffalo. But I got to be honest here, Angel. I don't want to tackle Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson's going to make just enough plays. The Ravens on the road against Buffalo. That's your 4 on a Friday edition of the Drive with Q. Who do you like in these games, Angel? I can give you the music if you like.
No, thank you. I'm because somehow or another something will get squirrely sideways, but and there it is.
What do you like?
So would I love to see the Texans upset Kansas City? I would. I truly would. I don't know if D'Amico Ryans has it in him yet to be able to pull off that majestic win and knock off the defending back-to-back champs. So to me, I will take, unfortunately, Kansas City for the win, and maybe a close one. It could go down to just be a pick 6. Who the heck knows? Then you have Buffalo, Ravens. I just not solidly convinced, and I don't care how much they keep saying how bitterly cold it's going to be in Buffalo. To me, Baltimore goes to Buffalo, takes care of business, and heads on to the AFC championship game. Yes. Oh, Jesus. All right. All right. Well, you guys can. Oh, Lord. Oh, boy. On top of that.
All right.
No,
So, yeah.
These guys are killing me.
So you don't like Buffalo?
No, his listener abuse. No, I think if Buffalo shows up the way Buffalo has showed up early on during the year, they can take care of Baltimore. Baltimore, I think right now is on a mission. I believe.
Great.
So that's why I'm saying Lamar Jackson and crew. Derrick Henry is going to have a field day just because of that alone. So to me, and it's going to be hard to stop Derrick Henry. Then you have the Eagles and the Rams. I don't know why people still have this crazy magical feeling that the Eagles are going to run away with this game. I think it'll be much, much, much closer than what people say. I will love to see my Birds move on to the AFC Championship game. But again, Detroit wins. That's it. Commanders, if the Commanders win, if the Commanders beat Detroit, well, I'll get to that game as well.
Yeah.
But for right now, if the Eagles move on, that's great. But getting down to Detroit and the Commanders at the rate of the way the Commanders have been playing as of late, and you got to be like minus 1 second. Forget the double zeros. Minus 1 second. If Jaden Daniels is close by enough to be able to now pull off a 6th comeback from when that's it.
Yeah, another comeback. Yep. All right, so you're leaning towards Washington. I feel as though you're dismissing your Eagles. I feel as though you want them to lose. So we're going to have a lot to talk about no matter what. on Monday, but I just don't see if the Rams stack the box. I
Right.
still believe the Eagles will be able to run against the Rams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel as though it's a bad match unless the Rams can cause some turnovers. If you don't get turnovers against the Rams, or if the Rams can't turn over the Eagles, they're going to be in trouble, man. And you got the weather, you got the crowd. If they fall behind, you just start to get a little. Listen, they closed out the season. They closed out the season. And that first meeting, that game was fluky. They lost by 17.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Who'd they play? I want to just be accurate here. All right, so they beat New Orleans. They beat Buffalo. That was a big win because of McDermott, right? They beat a fraud friggin' 49er team. They beat the Jets. They beat Arizona. They lost to Seattle. They could have won that game. So they're coming in hot, right? I mean, they're coming in on a nice little win streak. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 in a row, 5 of 6. So they clearly have some momentum. And against Minnesota, they were able to get to Darnold 9 times. I don't know if they're going to be able to get to Jalen Hurts 9 times. If they sack Jalen Hurts 6 times and hold Barkley under 120 yards, they're probably going to win this game. They're probably going to win the game. If they can't cause any turnovers and Barkley runs loose, I don't see how the Rams win. I don't. That's why I still think because of the weather, the ground games, Stafford can be the X factor. I believe they keep it close. I'm not inclined. Any game that I think is going to be a blowout this weekend, I believe it would be Kansas City and the Texans.
Yeah.
6.5 is a lot. The Ravens are going on the road and they're almost a 2-point favorite. A 2-point favorite on the road in Buffalo in a divisional matchup. I find that even again, not from a betting standpoint, I'm a little surprised by that. I feel as though people are overlooking Buffalo and they're not giving Buffalo a ton of respect. I mean, Buffalo is not a bad football team. They're a really good football team. Maybe they're waiting for the other shoe to drop with Josh Allen. I don't know. But I can tell you this, 3 things Buffalo has to do. If they don't do this, Monday we're coming on the air talking about the Ravens in the AFC Championship.
Yep.
They cannot have their offensive line break down. Pass protection has to be a key. And in order to do that, you got to run the football, which inevitably gives you the time of possession. So there's 2 right there. And you can't let Henry go off. Like Derrick Henry can get 170 yards, 150, but 5 yards, 10 yards, 7 yards. No, he can't have 25. He can't have those explosive runs.
Right.
25, 30, stiff arming people left and right, running 45, 50 yards. If he does, you're in trouble. Pass protect Josh Allen. Let him do what he does best. Have the offensive line hold up. Limit, Baltimore's possessions. I think they have a very good shot to win the game. Even though I'm going with the Ravens, I still believe Buffalo has a puncher's chance. I believe Washington has a puncher's chance. The Rams have a puncher's chance. I just don't think the Texans, out of those 4 games, have a shot to beat Kansas City. You said Baltimore's on a mission. Kansas City is on a mission. And I'll throw one more thing to you. Don't you think Stafford knows that if they can beat the Eagles and Detroit wins, he's got an opportunity to go in Detroit and beat his former team that drafted him?
Sure does.
There's that incentive with that.
Because it would piss off Detroit fans to no end.
That's your motivating factor, right?
Yep.
It's your motivating factor. Joe D in Philly chimes in. I can't believe Angel is an Eagles fan. He is not welcomed into Tampa Joe's. Ooh, Joe D knows about Tampa Joe's. He's basically saying, will you be watching the game, Tampa Jones?
At Tampa Joe's, no. I'll be home watching the game.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I got too much stuff to do over the weekend that if I would love to be down there, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately, with as much stuff I got to do and then the travel to go down there and I can visually do things here in the studio while still working and things done. So, no.
Yeah. I mean, do we Do we close with the freak joke of a day? I mean, is this how we were on such a high? I feel Madman just, is a little insecure today, but all right. What is 5 miles long and has a combined IQ of 40?
Yeah, stripper parade. Although it would have been nice if you actually changed it up because that's what he used yesterday.
Regurgitating jokes.
Yeah, he used it yesterday.
See, that's a problem.
Yeah,
you gotta come with friggin' new material, man.
Yeah, and he's pretty good. Usually every day he would change it, but I remember that joke from yesterday.
Probably didn't have enough fresh roasted coffee on this Friday.
And probably not.
All right. Well, listen, there are the picks. We'll tweet them out. Do not forget, we will all be back in the saddle over the weekend. Pete will get you started. Pete Shepard Show, Monday to Friday, 7 to 10. Martinez and Company, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 10 to 12. Myself, I was about to say my old show, The Drive with Q, Monday to Friday, because to my left, I'm looking at the comments. I was about to say middays. The Drive with Q, 4 to 6, Monday to Friday. And download the app, SR 1029 FM, the game. Appreciate Jovan Alford for coming on board.
Not me.
What happened? What happened here? What happened? What?
Caught with your
No. Absolutely not, man. Hey, I don't know how the comments come in. I don't know how they're filtered. I mean, if Angel's telling me that the joke was there, now this is what happens. Now he's getting the Bunker Boys to come in on the conversation. Ironically enough, as we're starting to wrap it up and try to get the hell out of here on a Friday. I don't know. Like, the comments come in and we try to find. The other day, there were like 100 and something odd comments. You guys want me to rip through every single comment?
Well, that's the way it was yesterday.
You might have a funny joke, which, oh, by the way, you regurgitated the other day. That's horrible. We're talking original content. Bring something to the table. He used that joke, which basically means now, if he uses it Wednesday, he's got nothing left. He's got no new material. That's horrible. You're supposed to write your own material.
It's Monday.
What? There is.
And there's Trevor.
Mendioso Monday should be the new Monday show name. No, there's no Mendy. It's a Manolo Lunes. Lunes Mendioso Cabrón Monday. You guys are too much. All right, good stuff from Jovan, Lake Lewis, and of course my guy Angel Martinez behind the glass. Don't forget, we're on demand on the YouTube channels, SR 1029 FM The Game. Also Rich Quinones, Rich Q on Q. Follow us on social media, on X, on IG. You know what? We'll let Madman close it out. What is it, Trevor? These guys said, and I quote, "Oh man, we can't see your comment."
No, that's no.
That's absolutely, that's not Mendioso. That is the furthest and/or farthest from the truth.
That's right.
Yeah, we're definitely Angel's going to fold on our question, and we know that.
Not me.
Right, put the bright lights on him, man. Well, you'll get picked out of a lineup in 10 seconds.
Sure, well, I'm ex-military, so nope, I don't fess up crap.
Oh, that's true. That's right. That's right. You have to try to figure out a way to get to that sweet spot of his. Who knows? Maybe we just, we have you in interrogation. All of a sudden, we give you a little soup. That seems to be your weakness.
Only if the wife makes it.
There you go. Fair point. Fair point. All right, brother. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the games. We'll be back in the saddle on Monday from 4 to 6. As always, have a good Sports Friday. We'll talk to you on Monday on another edition of The Drive with Q. Keep it safe. Keep it locked in SR 102 as well all weekend long and into next week. With that, I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.